What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today we're talking about the 2021-2022 NFL awards again, but today with the twist on betting. Where could you potentially cash out, make some big money towards the end of the year? This is always really interesting, plus it just gives me the opportunity to talk about some players maybe I don't talk about a ton in my videos. So with that said, hopefully you all enjoyed today's vid. If you do, please hit that like button, it would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel, want more sports content like this, please consider subscribing and give me your thoughts on my bet takes, and then also who are some players you're thinking about putting some money on for MVP, comeback player of the year, offensive, defensive player of the year, rookie of the year, yada yada yada, all of it. I want to hear your thoughts, plus I respond to every comment in the comment section. So let's talk about some potential NFL bets we can make to make some money this year. Do want to start with the preface real quick. I'm using these odds based off of Betting Pros consensus. Thought about using DraftKings, but ultimately their site was a little easier to read and get the most out of by using their odds. Basically, they just take DraftKings, FanDuel, and a bunch of other sites and then just, congregate it into a consensus, which their name would suggest. So I'm using these odds, or their odds, I should say. So, depending on where you're putting bets, those numbers may change some. And then I have 3 players listed for every award. Front runner, top 5 in odds, mid-tier 6 through 10, and then long shot is everybody else, just to get you on the same page there. And there is a difference between what could be a good bet and then my picks for the award. So I highly implore you to go check out my 2021 NFL award predictions video. That will give you an idea of who I think I would choose to get that award as of right now here in early August. But this video is more geared towards, hey, if something crazy happens, or if you do want to put money on this, where could you potentially maximize your return on that bet? Without further ado, let's get started talking about defensive rookie of the year. Jamin Davis, he's in that top 5, but I think he's a pretty sneaky pick because a lot of people want to look towards like Micah Parsons, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Jalen Phillips is who I picked in my awards prediction video, but Jamin Davis is a guy who will rack up tackles. He's a good athlete, so you figure he'll be good in coverage. He's playing for Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio, former NFL linebackers. I like that situation. I could see him really filling up the stat sheet, so even plus 800. Don't hate Jamin Davis here. And then Azeez Ojulari, 1,600. He could certainly lead this team in sacks, and this is a Giants team that could end up being, a top 5, top 10 defense at the end of the year. And if Azeez Ojulari is efficient with all the other talent around him, it's not out of the realm of possibilities he has 10, 12 sacks this year. And if he leads all rookies in sacks, this is kind of an award that's catered towards people who get a bunch of tackles or those who get sacks. So, because of that, Davis and Ojulari make a ton of sense, but as does our long shot pick, and I really love the idea of Boogie Basham here. Haven't revisited the official Bills depth chart, but I've been saying this since draft day. I felt like Boogie Basham had a better chance to see the field more often than Greg Rousseau, just given where they were at the end of their college career, quote-unquote playing career, because obviously Greg Rousseau opted out last year. But Basham is the guy who doesn't have quite the ceiling that Rousseau does, but he can make an impact right now. And then Rousseau is obviously the inverse of that. So I feel like a team that needed pass rush. Jerry Hughes is solid. Mario Addison still plays. But there was an actual chance in my eyes that Boogie Basham carves out a significant role and sees a lot of the field, specifically on passing situations. And he fits really well into that 4-3 defense, and I could see him coming away with 10 sacks, and maybe that leads the group of rookie pass rushers. And at 2,500, that is a really solid long shot bet in my eyes. Now on to offensive rookie of the year. Front runner here, Zach Wilson was my pick. Obviously Trevor Lawrence, he's like plus 300, so it's not really worth it there. Thought about Najee Harris, but ultimately this is an award that's more biased towards quarterbacks. And, same odds here, plus 800 for Justin Fields. Trey Lance, I think, was 850 per this website. But Wilson is guaranteed going to be the starter for every game of the season, barring injury, of course. Field, I think, sees the field pretty quickly, but, still week 2, 3, 4 when that ETA might be. And who knows? Lance has been making a ton of highlight plays. He's been getting a lot of buzz. Maybe he is the week 1 starter for San Francisco, so maybe he should be the guy we talk about here. But that's even up in the air. There's no question about who's going to be under center for New York. And because of that, Zach Wilson's going to have a large enough sample size to really blow away the field and, of course, plays the right position to come away with this award, at least when we're talking, this early in the season. And then additionally, this team put in so much into revamping that offense. You bring in Corey Davis, second year for Denzel Mims, even though he's running with the third team, which is a little concerning. You draft Elijah Moore at the top of round 2. Year 2 of Mekhi Becton. You draft Elijah Vera Tucker. Move up in the draft to get him, I should say. You sign Morgan Moses. They are putting pieces around and trying to create the most optimal situation for Zach Wilson to just ball out from rookie year onward. So because of that, plus 800, not a bad front runner pick. Mid-tier, gotta go Jamar Chase here. In my eyes, not only is he in the best situation of these rookie wide receivers, but he was my wide receiver one. I mean, specifically if you're keeping Kyle Pitts as a tight end, then I'm definitely for sure locking in. Chase was my wide receiver one. And he's going to a situation where the team has a bad defense, so they're going to have to play in shootouts to win. He's got awesome chemistry, obviously, with Joe Burrow, who is a fantastic quarterback, assuming he's out on the field. And because he plays with Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, can't double team Chase. So he's in 1-on-1s. He's in a great offense. He's going to have to put up points. And he's got a great quarterback. This dude, simply enough, will fill it up. I mean, there's no doubt. I think he goes for 1,000 yards this year. And then you tack on 7, 8, maybe more touchdowns. That stat line's hard to ignore. And then the long shot pick here is Javonte Williams. He really did give Najee Harris a good run for, that RB1 money. Once we got to draft time, I kept it at Harris, but Williams was knocking on the door right there behind him. And ultimately, I think Melvin Gordon is potentially a cut candidate. But even if he's not, by, a quarter of the way into the season, I could definitely see this backfield turning into Williams with a splash of Gordon as opposed to a 50-50 split. This is going to be an offense that wants to establish the run, right? Like whether it's Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Lock, those are not elite quarterbacks. They're not going to try to air it out a ton. They're not going to go Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City offense. They're going to try to feed Williams and Gordon. So even if it is a 50-50 timeshare, I think there's enough touches there to go around. They're going to, I think, eventually get to the point where they're feeding Williams, setting up play action for guys like Judy Sutton, KJ Hamler and company, Noah Fant as well, of course. So given all that, plus Williams is just a talented player, like highest PFF missed tackle rate ever. That's insane. He can catch the football pretty well. Not necessarily a great route runner, but he has good hands, and you can work with that within an offense. So I think at plus 2,200, this is a really solid long shot bet for you to make. Now let's talk about comeback player of the year. Dak Prescott obviously is one that, his odds are so low here. I would not encourage you to put a bet on that. It's like plus 175 or plus 150 or something where it's just not really worth your time. Front runner pick though, Nick Bosa was who I pegged to win this award because I think Dak has a really solid shot at winning Offensive Player of the Year. We'll talk about that award here in a little bit, but Nick Bosa could easily garner 12, 15 sacks, be the most disruptive player on one of the best defenses in football if everybody stays healthy. So all that culminates to a really solid resume for Bosa to try to come away with this award. And they play a lot of primetime games, which always helps his case as well. Mid-tier pick, Derwin James. I mean, at plus 1,600, when you're talking about a guy who, when he's out on the field, is maybe the most talented safety in all of football, that's a solid bet. Like, you're putting your money in a good cause. Additionally, there were clips on Twitter the other day of him locking up Keenan Allen. And, there's been plenty of people who say if Derwin James was an outside corner like Jalen Ramsey did, instead, because Ramsey and James both coming out of Florida State, one pick safety, one pick corner. But there's been people who have argued that Derwin James, if he was an outside corner, would be among the best in the NFL. And he kind of shows that locking up Keenan Allen, one of the best route runners the game has to offer, but this dude can do it also. You could see him rack up tackles for loss, picks, pass breakups, forced fumbles, fumble recovery, everything. Anything you could give a safety, anything in the stat sheet, basically. Derwin James can fill it up. So at plus 1,600, one of the most talented players at that position. Definitely a solid mid-tier pick. And then our long shot pick, Danielle Hunter. I was kind of surprised to see it so low at plus 2,200, but come on. This is a guy that if at the end of the year, you told yourself right now that Danielle Hunter had 13, 14 sacks, you would not be surprised because he's been that dude. He is that good, and he's coming into his prime. 26 years old, he is continuously getting better. Obviously, the scary neck injury kind of puts a hold on all that, but this comeback player of the year, all these guys had, worrisome injuries in their past. That's what makes this award so valuable and so tough to bet. So because of that, Danielle Hunter could be a guy who double-digit sacks, helps that defense get back on track under Mike Zimmer, and then they could potentially make the playoffs if that defense is just not terrible like it was last year. So because of all that, I think Danielle Hunter, really solid bet you can make as a long shot for comeback player of the year. Next award we'll talk about, Defensive Player of the Year, and I think this is my favorite one to talk about. So front runner pick, really thought about putting TJ Watt here, so consider him an honorable mention. I feel like the last 2 years he has had more than deserving campaigns, and kind of feels like this is the year where, the narrative this past year was like, Russell Wilson's never got an MVP vote. I don't think he got one last year. So, but that narrative kind of builds and eventually it could just land you an award. I feel like that might end up being the case for TJ Watt. especially when you consider Bud Dupree's gone, Mike Hilton's gone. I think Alex Highsmith, is going to be a good enough replacement to Dupree. Antoine Brooks is a bit of a question mark for that defense, but you can see the narrative building that, hey, TJ Watt deserved the past couple years. That defense lost pieces. He was still great, kept them in that top 5 defensive area in the NFL. So I could see the narrative building for TJ Watt, but the odds were a little better for Chase Young. And given what he was coming out of Ohio State, and even what he was last year, when he was on the field, he was an electric pass rusher, but a fantastic run stopper, and a guy who can do both. Coming into his second year, you can only expect that much more out of him. He has a bunch of quality players around him. Obviously, that front 4 in Washington is insane. Obviously, I talked about Jamin Davis. Really like that selection. Cole Holcomb, pretty solid. The secondary got better with the signing of William Jackson. Hopefully, Landon Collins can be healthy. I mean, it's just shaping up to where that defense can make the stock of Chase Young even better than he already has it at, given his talent, which is just insane. So at plus 1,200, he was like number 5 for this betting. So he just barely makes in that front runner category. But I think he'd be a really solid bet here. He could be the biggest, or the best player on the best defense in football, and all that could culminate into him winning Defensive Player of the Year. Mid-tier pick. This is kind of wild to think. Like, Chase Young has shorter odds than Khalil Mack. That's kind of wild. Show how much the game has changed since I've been watching it. But Khalil Mack plus 2,000. This could be the return of the Mack. No pun intended. But regardless, this guy could easily go for 15 sacks. Like, he may not still be the Khalil Mack that he was like when he first busted on the scene with the Raiders and when he first got to Chicago, where he was just like, it was him and Von Miller. Those were the 2 best pass rushing outside linebackers in the league. But Khalil Mack still has that 13 to 16 sack potential. And if the Bears take a step forward, last year they took a step back. If they get back in that top 10 defensive category, that's again kind of building the argument for why Mack should win this award. So plus 2,000, I think that's a really solid bet. But this is my guy. This is who I'm putting money on. Brian Burns at plus 10,000. You've got to be kidding me. There is more than a sum zero chance that at the end of the year, you would believe a scenario where Brian Burns leads the league in sacks. And given the rest of that team, they add Hassan Reddick, so it's now a nice complement on the other side. You can't just double team Burns and just ignore everybody else. They draft Davion Nixon, who I think comes in pass set situations. I think Derek Brown already showcased some pretty good pass rushing potential, considering coming out of Auburn, he was considered a mean run stopper. He already showcased he can do more than just that. Another year of Jeremy Chin. All those young players just progressively getting better. You add J.C. Horn, you're trying to improve that secondary overall, and all that could just help the situation get better for Brian Burns, where he goes for 15 up to 18 sacks. I could legitimately see this guy leading the league in sacks. And I'm making this video a little late because, I've been saying this for a while, but then, now it's starting to catch some more buzz. I know Darius Butler, a guy who used to play in the AFC South, used to play for the Colts. He has said that he likes Brian Burns as a long shot bet here, and I've seen it in some other NFL podcasts I listen to, PFF primarily, but I've heard other people saying this now, so this is kind of like, it feels like me writing their coattails, but I swear it, I've been saying this for some time now, and even if they're saying it, plus 10,000, that is a fantastic long shot bet for Defensive Player of the Year. And I encourage you, just put a little bit of money on this, and if it hits, thank me later. On to Offensive Player of the Year, and this was probably the one I had the hardest time with. I'd honestly, of these 3, I'd probably bet Josh Allen. Let's start with Dalvin Cook, right? Like last year, the award goes to running backs. I don't know if they, the voters would do that 2 years in a row, but there's a possibility where while this team is, we think about Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Kirk Cousins, Irv Smith Jr. could have a big year. This team offense runs through Dalvin Cook, and it sets up the play action opportunities that get Justin Jefferson so open. Adam Thielen making big plays, and Kirk Cousins lowering the ball down the field off those play action boots. But it all starts with Dalvin Cook, and I could see a scenario where he leads the league in rushing, has 8 to 12 touchdowns, kind of a wide range there. But if he's the league leader in rushing and has a huge fantasy year, that always kind of feels like it plays into effect here. Even though there isn't a fantasy award, I feel like that always plays a small percentage into who gets this award. And if he comes away with enough touchdowns, add some passing game production, it'd be hard to argue against Dalvin Cook, especially considering the MVP is almost certainly going to be a quarterback, and there's a good chance that Offensive Rookie of the Year could be a QB. Like, all that might lead to a situation where they're saying, okay, well, we can't make it all QBs. Offensive Player of the Year, the voters lean running back once again and give it to Dalvin Cook. Plus 1,400, also pretty solid odds for a guy who's top 5 in this category. Mid-tier, Josh Allen. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say here. This team wants to throw the football. They have weapons around them. I know they lose John Brown, but Gabriel Davis is a good field stretcher. Emmanuel Sanders can also still get open at a high rate. He's been getting a ton of praise at training camp. And not only can he do it down the field like John Brown, he is a better intermediate factor. 10, 19 yards down the middle of the field. That's where Sanders is better than John Brown. I think it opens up the offense a little bit more. It's year 2 of Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. It's scary to think it might get that much better. Hopefully they can get more production on the running game. Zach Moss can prove to be like an every down running back. Splashes of Devin Singletary. They can just improve there. I think it helps the offense overall. The interior of the offensive line needs to get better, but this team wants to throw the ball. They have a ton of weapons around Josh Allen, and their defense isn't necessarily great, so you could see a lot of situations where they're playing in high-scoring games. So plus 1,600, pretty solid mid-tier pick. And the long shot, Matt Stafford. It feels like the NFL wants Matt Stafford to have a good year, more so than like the media. You can kind of look at this in a couple different ways, but there is no denying, even with Cam Akers down, there is an abundance of weapons around Matt Stafford. Darrell Henderson's a starting caliber running back. The offensive line, aging, and not super deep, but on paper, still pretty okay. It's at least average. It's in the middle of the pack. And then you have Tutu Atwell, who they take in the second round, who's baby Deshaun Jackson, who they signed this free agency. Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, 2 great route runners. I like Van Jefferson a ton. They're putting players around Matt Stafford and giving him the best supporting core he's ever had. I know he had Megatron, but when it comes to top to bottom, the entirety of the pieces around Stafford, this is as good as it's been. And that's not including Tyler Higbee, who also a solid player and a good enough tight end to get the job done. Add in Sean McVay. If he can continue to innovate that offense and create interesting passing looks, you could definitely see a situation where Matt Stafford fills up the stat sheet. The Rams are a 12-13 win team, maybe even win that division. But even if they don't, they're a playoff caliber team, and Stafford could just put up some gaudy numbers. So therefore, Offensive Player of the Year certainly feels like it's in the realm of possibilities. Second to last award we're going to talk about, Coach of the Year. Kind of an interesting one. I'd probably go Shanahan here. It's kind of crazy that all the odds are pretty long here, but there's a spot where he could either make Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance look good, and maybe the best for his resume to get this award is both. Like if he makes Garoppolo then Lance look really good whenever they make the change, that helps his case a ton. Additionally, this is a team that I think wins the division as of right now. Them and the Rams are close, but no matter how you split it, whether they win the division or they get into the wild card, they're a playoff caliber team if everybody stays healthy, and that's obviously much improved from winning 6 games last year, which helps Shanahan's case a ton. And everybody knows Kyle Shanahan is a fantastic offensive mind and a great coach. So considering he hasn't won the award, it kind of comes back to what I was saying about TJ Watt earlier, where it kind of feels like eventually one's going to be given to him just because of the credo he has in a lot of ways. And this could be the year that happens for Shanahan. Plus 1,400, pretty decent odds too. Sean McDermott, hey, they play the Chiefs this year, and if the Bills pull the upset, there's a pathway for them to be the number 1 seed in the AFC. And if that happens, it's really tough to take this award away from Sean McDermott. And he will also have to improve the defense. Last year, they kind of took a step back. But prior to that, that had been the backbone of this team. So if McDermott can get the defense back on track, the offense is going to fill up the stat sheet. This is going to be a really good team. Maybe the second best team in the AFC. And again, if they take that game against Kansas City, they may come away with that first round bye, which would be huge for McDermott if he wants to win this award. Granted, I know that's not what he's going into the season thinking about, I got to win Coach of the Year or anything like that. But if they were able to get in that situation, but even if they don't come away as the number 1 seed, I think there might be enough to stack up the resume for McDermott. An improved defense, second best team in the AFC, and maybe it comes to a spot where, maybe Tom Brady does take a step back. I don't know. I'm not putting money on that, but maybe it turns into a spot where we look at the Bills as not just the second best team in the AFC, but the second best team in the NFL overall. That is certainly something that could come to fruition. I'm not saying it's likely, but it could happen. And if that does, then Sean McDermott feels like a logical pick to be in the running for Coach of the Year. And a long shot pick. I was kind of surprised that his odds were this low. But Mike Vrabel, this is a guy who was a fantastic defensive player. And if he can coach up that defense, improve the pass rush in specific, that bodes well for him. And it puts this team in a position where they're going to score points if everybody's healthy. Like Ryan Tannehill, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Derrick Henry, a good offensive line. Anthony Ferguson is fine. Josh Reynolds is okay as your wide receiver 3. Like that side of the ball is going to do its job. It really comes down to Tom Downing as the OC, but even with him being a step down from Arthur Smith, that's a good enough team, that's a good enough group to put up a ton of points. So If the defense of Tennessee looks a lot better, a lot of credit's going to in turn go to Mike Vrabel. And if that defense gets better with that offense, I know we were just gassing up the Bills as potentially the second best team in the NFL, or at least the AFC. But there's a pathway where the Titans could say the same, where that offense is clicking. You can't defend A.J. Brown nor Julio Jones. And Ferkser's a nice compliment. Derrick Henry does what Derrick Henry does, and Tannehill's great behind the offensive line. And then this defense, maybe even gets above average. Maybe Bud Dupree, Harold Landry are just more focused on, or put in a position, it's not really their decision. It really comes down to Vrabel and that coaching staff, where they're being utilized almost exclusively as pass rushers and getting the most out of their talents. And then this team overall just gets a lot better. And maybe they're the second best team in the AFC. And if that happens, again, it's tough to knock Mike Vrabel on it. Plus 2750, those are pretty solid odds. And our final award for today's video, MVP, frontrunner pick, Dak Prescott, plus 1600. This is, again, he's in the top 5. So, pretty long odds here, but it's kind of like Patrick Mahomes at plus 500, and everybody else has got long shot odds, which makes sense. I think Rodgers is up towards the top as well. Thought about Tom Brady here, but I think his odds are down to plus 1,000, plus 1,100. So a little bit longer odds here, and I could see a situation where Dallas is playing in a ton of shootouts. Because of that, Dak Prescott's throwing for 300 plus yards every single week, and he's getting a bunch of touchdowns. He has some rushing upside. Obviously, the weapons around him are fantastic. Dalton Schultz, Blake Jarwin, okay tight ends, but where this team is elite compared to almost every other team in the league, and maybe it probably is the best wide receiver trio in the NFL, that and the Bengals, I suppose, but I'd give the edge for sure to Dallas. Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb looks like he's bodying people in training camp. It's crazy. And Michael Gallup, that's elite. Zeke Elliott, Tony Pollard can also catch the ball out of the backfield. But they need to get more out of that running game. But if the offensive line is healthy, this team can put up points with the best of them, and that defense isn't good. So they're going to have to score a ton. Because of that, the stat sheet for Dak Prescott might be absurd at year's end. If this team makes the playoffs, maybe they win the division. What if they get up to 12 wins? It'd be tough to take the MVP award away from Prescott. Mid-tier pick here, Justin Herbert. He looked really good last year, and a lot of people will point to his success against pressure as an unsustainable stat, and I agree. It's a pretty fluid number. You never really see the same guys at the very top of the list. But this team's offensive line just also got better. Matt Filer, Rashawn Slater, Corey Linsley. They've done enough to where ideally Herbert's seeing less pressure. So even if he's not as good against pressure, he's going to see less of it, and it kind of counteracts one another. Additionally, the hiring of Brandon Staley, I think, makes this team better, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. If Derwin James is healthy, we talked about him earlier, that helps a ton. If they can generate enough pass rush opposite of Joey Bosa, that defense could be really, really good. I love the drafting of Asante Samuel. And if that defense is good, it helps out the team's overall image, and they could get into the playoffs. And Herbert's going to put up numbers with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams if he's out there, Josh Palmer I like a lot. Even some of the other guys that they had towards the end of last year were making some big plays. Austin Eckler, fantastic pass catcher out of the running back spot. Jared Cook's okay, I guess. I'm not high on him, but hey, the NFL keeps giving him jobs, so they clearly know more than I do. And all this could put up a spot where Herbert looks like, baby Mahomes in a lot of ways, plays in that division. Maybe he takes one of those 2 games against Kansas City. That would help his stock a ton for this award. But if Herbert looks like baby Mahomes, they go maybe 11-6, 12-5 as well. They could be in that category, be a high-seeded wild card. I could see this potentially playing out. And the long shot bet here, I'm not really crazy about all the options here, but Baker Mayfield plus 3,300. Maybe the Browns are the second best team in the AFC. I'm kind of reiterating what I talked about with Sean McDermott and Mike Vrabel, but the Browns have a legit pathway, just like those other 2 teams, to be the second best team in the AFC, maybe the second best team in the NFL. They provide so much resources to the defense. They draft Greg Newsome. They bring in Jadeveon Clowney, Takk McKinley. They draft Joke. They sign Anthony Walker Jr. Overall, just trying to patch up that defense to make the team better overall. And in turn, you have OBJ come back. That moves Jarvis Landry from wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 2. They have a ton of tight ends. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, they're back. The offensive line's still intact. Year 2 between Baker Mayfield, Kevin Stefanski. All that to say, this team could easily be 12-5, 13-4 at the end of the year. And they want a prove-it year out of Baker Mayfield. Josh Allen just got paid. He got the bag. The Browns are trying to see if Baker Mayfield is that guy. So because of that, I still think they run the team through Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, but they're going to use Mayfield more than ever this year to truly see, is he a franchise quarterback? And if he answers that call and plays like a franchise quarterback with that good of a surrounding situation and with that good of a team overall to where they could be the next or number 2 seed in the AFC, but maybe they end up as a number 1 seed in the AFC. The regular season is not always a true indicator who's the best team. If all that happens at plus 3,300, you could really make some good cash on putting a long shot bet on Baker Mayfield. But that's going to do it for my 2021 NFL awards betting prediction video, if that's how you would title it. But hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel and more sports content like this, please consider subscribing. And again, comment your predictions and your bets down in the comment section. I respond to every comment. I'd love to have your thoughts. So let's talk about the NFL MVP awards and some good bets we can make down below. That's going to do it for today's vid. Hopefully you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.